Everyone. As usual, I am gonna add Elizabeth for the live. So give me a second, I have to find her. Yes. Let's see. And if you didn't know exactly, well, now we're sure.
We're matching, my dear.
So today, what's the topic? All hellos.
All-Hallows.
Hellos. Yeah, I forgot my H again.
No, you're good.
Yeah. And for those who don't know, Halloween is coming.
Absolutely. And you know what is interesting? So this is like the first Halloween since 1944 that there is a full moon on Halloween, because if you look at all the pictures of Halloween, and it's all about when the veil between the worlds is its thinnest,
Mhm.
and all the pictures you see of Halloween are always with a full moon. But it's pretty incredible, but also a little bit par for the course that in 2020 it would be a full moon on a Saturday. All of those things that fit into the superstition are happening this year.
Yeah, and it's a crazy year.
It's a crazy year. Had
Yeah.
Anne Cecile and I known when we said, in January, uh, our wish to you all for 2020, may this year bring things that have never been seen before. We did not exactly know that it could go in a very different direction than we
No,
intended.
but we've learned. That's the thing.
But we
We
have
all have
learned.
to learn. That's the year of learning for humanity.
Yes,
Like,
exactly, exactly. And
oh,
it's that aspect of, here today for our co-creator blast of All Hallows. What are some of the things that we have been able also, despite the challenges of 2020, of things
mhm.
that were considered sacred, that we could actually reimagine them? And so that's our focus and our theme for today's co-creator blast.
Exactly. And we always have a song for it.
Mm-hmm.
And this year it's I
Absolutely. We
Put a
have a
Spell on You.
song, and so I wouldn't, there's other people who've done this song, but I'm going with the original Screamin' Jay Hawkins. If you don't know Screamin' Jay Hawkins' version of I Put a Spell on You, yes, you're welcome. Okay, so Screamin' Jay, I put a spell on you because you're mine. Stop the things you do. I ain't lying. I can't stand no running around. I can't stand no put me down. I put a spell on you because you're mine. Okay, so this song not only is talking about witchcraft, but it's talking about that aspect of how are we really understanding and looking at what the other person is doing? How are we taking them into focus and seeing that it's not about playing, it's about, how are we together, how are we showing up,
Mhm.
and how at times it can seem like a trap, but it can also be a little bit of magic. So depending upon your rendition, I Put a Spell on You can be a very romantic song, because it's that piece of when you're in love, when you have those rosy glasses on. It is also that aspect to see, um, it's like a magical world, and you can imagine things and you can do
Mm,
things that otherwise would not seem possible. And so
yeah.
that's why, a little bit of Screamin' Jay, you would have never have figured that a guy with a skull on a voodoo stick would be able to become an incredible famous singer, but he still has staying power.
Happens.
So with
It
that,
happens.
that's our theme song for All Hallows. What can we reimagine?
Mm.
Yeah. So, and Cecile, what are some of the things that, as you think about this aspect of what goes on Halloween, we get to dress up, we get to be someone that we otherwise wouldn't be, we get to reimagine and create a different reality and put a spell for one evening. What does this mean for you? You know, in terms of what are those things that are different and make believe in different cultures?
Well, I think for me, it's always fascinating to look at the opportunity that we give ourselves to be someone else. And
Yeah.
we are able for a night to be Superman or anyone else. Like I could be a graduate student, which I was 7 years ago, or I can just take the personality of someone else for one night. And I'm like, okay, that means if we are able to imagine being someone else for one night, what would it be if we wanted to be someone else at any other times? So if we are able to change reality one night, why don't we change it forever? You know?
Yeah.
And it's the opportunity of being someone else, but we are already the person. We just don't know it. We don't allow it to be. That would be my thing. You allow yourself to be crazy, and it's like with the spell on you. When you fall in love, there are very introverted men who would suddenly become crazy and be like, I just kissed her. I don't know what happened. Well, you know what happened. We know all what happened. And it's giving ourselves the authorization to do the things that forbid ourselves to do.
Yeah.
For any reason, you know, cultural reasons or belief reason. And I think we come back to the belief story of what do I believe? What do I want to really believe in? And can I change those beliefs when they are not serving me?
Absolutely. And I think that it is as we look to what are those things that are hallowed, if we look to systems, tools, processes, if we look to what we hear quite often, which, you know, well, that's the way we do things here. Or the topic of culture fit, meaning yesterday I was a part of the sourcing summit, and there was a wonderful talk by Lorato Samia about inclusion, diversity, and belonging. And the response from my friend Kim was perfect. Culture fit. I feel like I'm in my clothes, and if I gain a couple more pounds, I won't fit anymore. So one of the problems of lockdown. Yeah. So how are we understanding what those constraints are, and are these constraints really real? Or are they just kind of assumed, or we've just grown up with them and we've assumed that they are always going to be there? And I think if there's anything to be learned from what we said, May this year bring things that you never imagined before, it is also an interesting year because a lot of things that were considered sacred in terms of, you know, for example, working from home or having a laptop or doing remote schooling. These things were not considered normal. They were considered something for just a couple of different groups. And now as it has quickly become our reality that the whys as to where do you work, who works, what do you do at work, and why, these are being called into question more than they have perhaps in the last 10 years. And it's giving rise to the opportunity to say, hey, do we have to do this way, or can we reimagine a different way of going about it?
Yeah, and I find it really fascinating because I compared the Corona crisis, or, you know, coming into this new world, which is really hard for many people, or for many of us, if not everyone, to going abroad, because coming into Corona was the unknown world, and you are made aware that you have to do things differently because there is no other way. So if you want to work and you can't go to work, how do you do? But the same happened to me when I came to Germany and even in other countries. But Germany was the big shock because everything was different. And getting to understand those rules that are written nowhere
Nowhere, exactly.
Like nowhere. You can read all books. You need to experience going abroad to understand what it means.
Yeah.
And I'm reading a book, The Culture Map, from Erin Meyer right now. She is trying to give an understanding of how culture would impact the way we act in business. And the way and I like it because she says it really depends on where you are. So if you are from France, you will see the US very differently than if you come from Germany, because you have different backgrounds. And recognizing that those are just, frameworks that we've learned. And when you go into this new one, then, well, you can be on time. Like, that's possible. That's something that exists in the world. You can also work, organized. It's not like the French way of like, whoa, laissez-faire, let's see what happens. But it's enriching because we know, okay, there are many different ways to work around things. And we've been used to one way, going to work, having a coffee with the colleagues or not. And we are just realizing we just created the safety nest because we feel comfortable when we know what's happening, And that's I think the magic of Corona, if we could call about a magic, is that we're allowed to do something else. And exactly as you say.
I think, absolutely. And I think it's a good example of saying, that cultural, when you're brought up in a cultural group or your family, you assume that other families are like your family until you get married or have a really close friend where you're like, oh, wow, there's different ways that families can go. But it is that piece of what's so self-explanatory when it's part of how you've been socialized or raised, be it your culture, but also, for example, if you've been at a company and only been at one company, you assume that this is how all companies run. And I think you and I, if you're working as a consultant or if you've had different jobs at different companies, that there's a different socialization as to, like you said, what happens, what doesn't happen, what do people tell you? And it's, as we look to kind of reimagining and asking, what are those hallows? It is that question to say, if you look at your own team, what are the things that were so ingrained that over the last 6 months have been put into question? That you've reimagined? What has happened in your team? What has happened in your family? Things that were perhaps important, kept you busy. How are you looking at those things as comparison to perhaps how are you making connections? So it's that opportunity. And one of the things that when we talk about co-creation and we talk about teaming, one of the big things that we address is what are those professional culture clashes? So for example, sales is responsible for sales, not manufacturing, not the plant managers. R&D are the ones who come up with products, not the intern who is building apps on the side. So as we look to co-creating, it's how do we break down some of those professional cultural barriers that are not really fit for purpose and actually stand in the way of reimagining what could be. Yeah.
And it's really this idea of seeing what's not visible, making visible the invisible. And I always, when I speak with different organizations and some startups too, and when I talk about co-creation and you need to take some time to review how you work together, to think about it, be guided in the system or in this process, they're like, oh no, we don't really need it. And then if I have the opportunity to guide them through one workshop, only one workshop, like, well, because you were here, we were able to focus on the important stuff and not on the details, because we got this big picture. And I'm like, yes, that's why we need to learn how to unfocus to focus again. And
Yeah.
I think that's what we do with co-creation. We help
Mm-hmm.
people get over, on their flying birds, and take those loops or zoom out from 6 different perspectives, and then they
Mm-hmm.
can zoom in again and start to work.
Yeah.
But work is not the focus, it's how you connect the dots or the people,
Mm-hmm.
how you make sure that ideas are shared and not, a good idea can't come from an intern.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
good ideas, they come from everywhere, basically.
Precisely. Precisely. And I think this is one of the aspects as we continue, and as you think about your own next couple of months, let's just say until New Year's 2021, which apparently a lot of people are assuming that January 1st, 2021, a lot of things will turn back to a great normal. We're not quite there yet. But to say, if you think about the next 2 months, and you're thinking about what your life is right now, where you have those connections, what's sacred, what are some
Mm.
places where you might be a little bit stuck? What could you reimagine? What could you reimagine that would bring a good lever to make a change? Something positive where you could feel like, okay, I'm going to examine this and I'm going to say, what if it was like this? What if we
Mm.
did it this way? What if I talked to this person? What if we delved into this particular aspect a little bit deeper? What could we create that would be different and more positive in terms of its impact?
Yeah. And it's especially important because I think for most of the people I know, we've learned that there will be a second lockdown, which means
Mm-hmm.
that people are
Precisely.
already focusing on the bad. And I'm like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
we survived the first one and we also had good times. So try to
Mm-hmm.
focus on how you can make this second time better, because now we know how it goes, and
Yeah,
well,
absolutely. Well said. Yeah, absolutely. And to say, what are the benefits? I'm sorry, we know, and we've tried to really balance the line of the horribleness that is the downsides,
mm,
but looking also to this reorientation, this
mm, mm, mm,
aspect of how are we noticing what's really important? How are we acknowledging the essential work that people do? How are we supporting each other, not looking at the aspect of what's in it for me, but how can we actually support and care for one another because it's
mm,
important? I can't remember in my lifetime this aspect of caring for one another, how important it is, being such at the forefront of conversations and caring. In the same vein that, yes, there's also a lot of fear responses that are going on politically, socially,
mm,
but there is a lot of wealth in this connection and seeing the absolute inherent need for humans to be humane to each other, and how
mm.
are we showing up for one another.
Yeah, and I think especially when we know that some people are going through hell right now,
Mm-hmm.
whatever the hell looks like for them, I think it's even more important for those who are okay to shine even brighter, because
Yeah.
with the image of we are the light that can help them say, okay,
Yeah.
I'm in a bad situation right now, but if they can do it, I can do it too. And I think it's
Yeah.
our responsibility to give what we
Mm-hmm.
can. And if it's
Yeah.
just calling someone or sending an email and be like, hey, I just thought of you.
Yeah.
How are you? Because
Exactly. Simple
I think,
connections.
the connection you don't need. My best friends, they're all around the world.
Yep.
I have one in La Réunion, one in Mexico, one in Asia, and still I feel very connected to them. Why? Because we chat on WhatsApp every week or we send audios. And when I have a downtime, I call one of them. And when we meet again, feels like we met yesterday every
Couldn't
time.
agree more.
And I know we need the touch. We need to be with people. I really enjoy that, and I would prefer to have my friends in real life. But even if I don't have them there, I can remember their spirit, and
Yeah.
that's also learning another way to connect.
Yeah.
Instead of adding people to LinkedIn and just say, hey, how are you? Okay, let's have a chat. That's what I try to do. I always invite people to have a chat on LinkedIn, to open Zoom and have a discussion, even if it's just 30 minutes. And it does something positive to us. We feel good and seen as people,
Yeah,
which is
absolutely.
important right now.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's really our message for today's Co-Creator Blast, is to take the time, recenter, ask yourself, what are those hallows? What are the pieces that we could reimagine? And what are those simple steps, just like Aunt Cecilia said, to say, where can you reach out? Where can you connect? Where can you perhaps explore a little bit of that what if, and challenge some of those habits, some of those paradigms, and put on a different costume as to what could that superhero look like? What could that reimagination be? Not only in terms of your work, but also for you as a personal human being.
Yeah, because we're human first.
Human first, exactly. Exactly.
Uh,
Yes. Yeah. So I love
so
it.
I think
So
we're good for today.
exactly. That was just our piece today, is to say, okay, here, what can you reimagine? So think for yourselves, what would be those pieces that you considered perhaps sacred, and what could actually really help you to change that lever to have that positive impact that you want.
Yeah, because your
Yeah,
imagination is your best friend.
it truly is. It truly is.
Great.
All right. So with that, we thank you. We wish you, of course, a very, very happy Halloween.
Yes.
And that you
You
can graduate to that next level.
exactly.
I love it.
Awesome.
Awesome. Well, thank
Have
you,
a
Aunt
great time,
Cecilia.
everyone, and see you later. Bye bye.